12 o'clock Friday afternoon now. Welcome in. It is the halftime show. Tyler Head, Captain Dave. Terry Ford will be late arriving as always. And I typically do like to poke fun at Terry whenever he's late because it usually comes without warning. Today he did actually warn me, Dave. And I'm assuming because, so he tells me in a text message, he says, I'm going to be late in a meeting. But the way it's broken up is really funny. And I'm assuming because he was in said meeting, he couldn't look down at his phone to type it out. So it comes in as, I'm going, send. To be late, send. I'm in a meeting, send. And I thought, I'm like, did he just write me a haiku?
There you go.
Because I know haiku's are 3 lines. He didn't get the syllable count right. Was that?
It's 5 line, isn't it?
3 lines. 3 lines, but the syllables are 5 syllables in the first line, 7 in the second, and 5 in the third. Because it's a total of 17. So he didn't quite get the syllables right, but he inadvertently almost wrote me a haiku in telling me that he was going to be late for the show today.
Wow, who knew he was so talented?
I didn't know. I didn't know that either. Didn't know how multi-skilled he was. I also, I don't know if you ever, and I know you're riding the bus as of right now, but when you turn into our parking deck, if you're you can't turn in from the other side of the street. So when you're coming up Gervais Street, you turn right to go into our parking deck, right? And there's the sidewalk in front of the building. And when I get here at like 8:10, 8:15 in the morning, there's always people walking up and down the street. And you have to always be careful when you're pulling in, right? Because you never know if that person is looking and anticipating a car pulling in. And, you know, if they're walking up the street, you don't want to blindside them and pull in right as they're about to walk into your path. And as I'm coming up Gervais Street this morning, I see a baldish head walking towards the building. And I'm like, is that Terry? It was Terry getting his usual morning cup of coffee from wherever down the street. And like, as I'm approaching, I'm having to do like the calculation is in my head of like, okay, is he going fast enough or I need to just stop to let him cross? Or am I good to turn in front of him where he's not going to run into the side of my car or whatever? Like he was going slow enough where I kind of went and turned and it wasn't a problem. But you kind of play that game of chicken when you're pulling into our parking deck with people walking around here.
That's true. And since I walk a lot downtown.
Have you almost been hit by a car in that situation?
All the time. They do not obey laws. If you're in the crosswalk, you have the right. Well, of course, I always cross with the light.
And well, this isn't even the crosswalk. This is just the little drive-in area right here when you pull into our deck, because it's like the sidewalk crosses through it. And when you're pulling in, when you're about to pull in, and there's somebody walking, you're like, okay, do I stop because I think they're going to be in that little area when I pull in, or am I good to pull in because they're not going to get there by the time I pull in? You know what I mean? Like you got to be careful, and there's always going to be cars behind you. You don't want to slam on your brakes in the middle of Gervais Street and get rear-ended, but like you have to be careful, right?
Yeah. And if that coffee kicks in for Terry, he might go from slow to super fast. See,
you know what's really funny is like Terry is always drinking coffee. I don't think I've seen him uncaffeinated. Like he's very high strung, which I'm assuming is because of the caffeine. But like I don't think I've ever seen him without coffee.
Me either.
Yeah. Like if he just like went the whole day without it, what would he be like? I don't know. Would he talk really slow? Maybe.
Well, let's try it one time. Just take his coffee away from him.
Well, good luck with that. You're worried about your job security. That might push it over the edge if you take his coffee.
Yeah, that's true. He might go ballistic.
By the way, I shared the clip yesterday with my wife of you telling the story of getting broken up with on your birthday.
Yeah.
When I tell you she was rolling on the floor laughing, and it's not from the story itself, that's awful. But man, the way you delivered that was so perfect.
Oh,
like that is my favorite Dave moment since we've been doing this show. That, because you came in at the right time. It was the most Dave thing we'd ever heard. Wonderful job.
Thank you.
And credit to whoever the woman was that broke up with you on your birthday.
No credit to her.
No credit to her.
Evil woman.
When was the last time you saw her?
I ran into her at the mall one time.
Did you bring that up? Like, hey, remember when you broke up with me at my birthday party?
No, I tried to act like I didn't see her, but she's like, oh my God.
Well, why was she excited to see you if she broke up with you?
I have no idea.
Did she realize what kind of catch she had and let get away?
I don't think she even remembers that I existed.
Did she marry a really ugly guy? Be like, yeah, that's what you get.
Yeah.
Yeah. See? You lose the stallion. Can't get better than that.
Her loss.
Her loss, that's right. By the way, how's Golden Corral girl working out?
Haven't seen her since.
You haven't seen her since? Okay. Keep working it. Again, all you can eat, man.
Yeah,
perks.
I know. It'd be a perfect woman.
Absolutely. We'll continue to monitor Dave's dating life as time goes on here. But I'm going to start things off today. Got to get into a lot of what, Jeremiah Donati said on the post-game show yesterday with Jay and Elijah. We've heard from him several times since he took over back at the beginning of this year, but this is, at least here, is one of the few times we've heard him talk at length about a lot of things. And we'll start off with number one here, Dave, just kind of talking about the readiness of getting ready for this, new era that is revenue sharing that's going to kick in here in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, well, those plans are ready to go. We created those budgets back in the spring and informed our coaches of those, and so we're ready to execute those and get those players under contract. It's funny because some of those are just literally transferring contracts from the former contracts from the Garnet Trust over to the university. So some of it, it's just a matter of getting those on the right heading, so to speak. But there's also, this is interesting, and this is kind of pertinent to our conversation. I literally was just talking to a staff member. We had our first real NIL deal submitted to the clearinghouse through NIL Go, which was kind of historic. It was a football player, not to be named, submitted a deal for an autograph session. So I thought that was kind of interesting to kind of witness history on my way to get to the office to talk to you guys. So it's all in play. It's kind of surreal to think that it's here. We talked about it, for the past year. You've only heard me talk about it for 6 months, but all of us as athletic directors have been talking about this for a year, and to see it here now is surreal. So it's exciting. I mean, there's a lot of optimism, I'd say, coming out of Destin and then NACDA and Orlando, which is where I was earlier this week. Mm-hmm. Overall, the sentiment is one of optimism.
And that's an interesting point that he brings up. Even when the House settlement went through now a week ago, it feels like we've been talking about this forever, right? Because we knew this was coming. We knew this was somewhere on the horizon, that eventually we're going to get to the point of athletes being able to get paid directly by the universities, whether they be employees or not. It was kind of on the, up in the air a little bit, but we're finally here. And this is why Jeremiah Donati was brought in, right? And look, not that Ray Tanner wouldn't have been capable of doing the job as an AD in the revenue sharing era, but it's kind of one of those things that, like, okay, well, if he thought that he was only going to be around for a couple more years, why not go ahead and make the transition now? Bring in a guy that is, from this newer age of athletic directors that have been on the sports agent side and stuff like that, like Donati have, that have a real great grasp and understanding of what this new era is going to be. And he was obviously working and building towards that at TCU, and now brings that same knowledge over here to South Carolina. So again, this is where I think his legacy as an athletic director really begins. Because again, kind of the back half of the 2024-2025 athletic year was just kind of closing out what had started last fall, where of course Ray Tanner had been the athletic director, but starting July 1st, that is really where I feel like the Jeremiah Donati era as an AD truly begins, because going forward, it's all about budgets. It's all about how much you have from a resource standpoint to be able to spend with your respective respective teams and managing rosters and all those kind of things that he is at the helm of. And when you have teams that are successful, you're going to be able to say, hey, great job, and you did what you needed to do. You got the right resources and money and all this kind of stuff to the players. And when teams are struggling, people are going to point at him as well and say, hey, what the heck? Why don't we have more of whatever we need to be successful? So it's a tough job. That's why he gets paid a lot of money. And again, we're going to see what this era of Donati's athletic director will indeed truly bring. I thought it's interesting as well that he made mention of an unnamed, football player that became South Carolina's first submission to the Deloitte NIL Go Clearinghouse, which is set to approve or deny, these new NIL deals. Because, again, you have your revenue sharing, which is the school directly paying the athletes out of that fund of a little over $20 million. But traditional NIL is still very much a thing. What they're trying to avoid, or what they're trying to put an end to, essentially, is the pay for play. And I, for one, appreciate Jeremiah Donati's honesty. And we may get the clip coming up here in a little bit of calling it just that yesterday when talking to Jay and Elijah. It's pay for play. Like, it was not about name, image, and likeness. It was about, hey, I have X amount of dollars. If I give it to this quarterback, he's going to come play for my school, which is what it had, become. And right, everybody had to do it. If you want to be competitive, South Carolina's no different. But they're trying to wrangle that in. And what he said there with this unnamed football player that submitted this NIL request to the clearinghouse, I would imagine probably gets approved because he said it was an autograph session where, and whoever this player is at whatever this venue or event is going to be is going to be able to benefit on his name recognition and whatever he did on the football field as far as interest in people wanting to come pay, likely, to have his autograph, get signed, and all that kind of stuff. Again, they're trying to prevent, like, hey, Joe Schmo threw $500,000 at the Carolina athletic program, and now he just wants to give that to a quarterback or a wide receiver or something along those lines. Those are things they're trying to prevent. Now, again, as we talk about the the NIL clearinghouse, likely going to find itself embroiled in lawsuits once they start denying some of these things. Because, again, that violates antitrust, and how can you tell a player what they can earn and what's fair market value and all that kind of stuff. It's going to get messy. Just go ahead and be prepared for that. But, again, for what we've just heard there from Coach Donati, at least in that one instance, they are trying to go about this the right way and hopefully make this a smooth process in terms of, South Carolina student athletes, getting their NIL deals in addition to what they're going to be making from the university. Plenty more on this as the day goes along, as well as the other things happening this weekend. Pretty good sports weekend. You got College World Series getting started here in a little under 2 hours, and then you've got NBA Finals tonight. You've got another more of the Stanley Cup Finals going on. Wild game last night that obviously ended in overtime. So plenty of things to get to about the weekend ahead as the halftime show rolls on. Tyler Head, Captain Dave, Terry Ford arriving as we speak here on the game.
Halftime show. Terry Ford, Tyler Head, David Dare.
How was your meeting?
It was phenomenal. I love meetings. Ever tell you how much I love meetings?
Well, it depends on what the meeting's about. Or you were discussing Dave's future, right?
Well, that was the biggest part of the meeting.
So we were.
By the way, we said that, and Dave's scared now.
I told Dave about me trying not to hit you when I was driving in this morning. Because I said, well, Terry was going to get his usual cup of coffee because you are always drinking coffee. Yes. And we were debating, like, well, I've never seen Terry uncaffeinated. And he's like, Dave says, well, maybe I'll just take his coffee from him. Like, you want to get fired? That's how you do it.
Not a good idea, Dave.
Yeah. You're worried about your job security. I wouldn't recommend that.
Not a good idea, Dave. I love you deeply. Not a good idea. You don't want to see me non-caffeinated, Dave. Anyway, yeah, it was funny we were talking about that when, because a lot of people walk.
Yeah,
you forget.
You gotta be careful.
That is an actual roadway into a garage.
That is, and again, you're doing the equation in your head. Okay, I'm traveling X amount of speed. They're walking at X amount of speed. Do I need to stop before I turn, or am I good enough to turn in so I don't run over them?
Exactly. And there have been times I've turned in there like that.
Sure.
And you know what? And again, it's just not like you get mad, but you will sit there just for fun, put it in neutral, and gun the engine.
Yeah.
And just watch them go to the bathroom all over themselves.
Yeah.
But all right. So we've had the Jeremiah Donato. You played the first cut about the rev share.
Yes.
And we'll circle back to that because there's a lot to get to with Donati, and we're going to get to it all today. Scott Hamilton, 215, like always, because we can't find anybody else. And I also reached out to a couple other folks, and I have not checked to see if I got anything back. I might have. Let's see. We might have a guest. We might not. I'll tell you soon.
Okay.
Let's see. We do have a guest in the 2 o'clock hour. We're going to. That's what happens when you have meetings.
Cool.
John Hale from the Herald Ledger in Lexington. I want to find out just how hot the seat is for Mark Stoops.
Ooh,
you lost your guy, Vince Morrow, your right-hand man.
Yeah.
Left you for, by the way, the enemy. It's like Hatfield's McCoy's. Yeah. It's like a Hatfield left to go to a McCoy.
And here's the thing, and I get it. Louisville is also a fellow Power 4 institution. But let's be honest. There should never be any instance where a team in the ACC is a better situation than the SEC in terms of resources, money, and all that kind of stuff. Because in the SEC, you're making about double based on the TV deal.
So Vince Morrow, it feels like jumped off the sinking ship. That is Mark Stoops' Kentucky Wildcat football program.
Stoops really wishing he probably got that Texas A&M gig now, right?
That started the whole thing, right?
That did start the whole thing.
Remember.
Because we were walking back from the Clemson game when that stuff was happening, and we're talking about it. We're like, Stoops? Really? A&M? But I think it was the perception of like, well, he hasn't had enough help because they're a basketball school. If he goes to a place with a ton of money, he'll be great. Like, maybe, I don't know, but I wouldn't want to take that risk.
Yeah, I think that, and then from the A&M side, why would this be the guy you pick after Jimbo?
Well, that's why it blew up, because the fan base lost their mind. Like, this guy? We're going to hire Mark Stoops? No. And, like the Shianu thing at Tennessee, when enough people get angry about something, when it comes to hiring a coach, it can quickly go away.
Yes, and so that went away quick. And then, by the way, the AD went away.
Yes, he did. And didn't he leave? He went to Ohio State. That's right, Bjork.
And so to me, I just find this very fascinating. And as we look through the rest of the conference, and obviously an opponent for South Carolina.
Yep.
What's the temperature? Because then you come off of the Texas A&M flirtation, and then you stink. Yeah. It's not good.
And the former 5-star quarterback that was supposed to lead you to these great heights ended up quite literally retiring before the season was even over, I think.
Right, he got benched near the end of the year. Yeah. Vandergriff got benched near the end of the year and then retired.
Yeah.
That's how bad things went in Kentucky.
Yes, exactly.
So let's take anything. If you're going to go to flirt with another person,
sure, then
you stay with the person that you're staying with.
It's going to be awkward.
And then you know what? You start leaving the toilet seat up a lot. And you're not paying the bills on time.
At some point, they decide, maybe you should go.
Yeah, second thought, how's everything with that other person?
By the way, that roommate that was the mediator now left.
What are you going to do now?
Yeah, now what are you going to do?
So I just think the whole Kentucky thing's interesting. So we will get John Hale on from the Lexington newspaper to get a little down low on Kentucky football. All right, Dave, get the old sound finger ready. Jeremiah Donati, talk baseball. Hand me that little sheet of paper there, Tyler. That's what happens when I'm in a meeting. All right, let's go with cut 5, Dave. Jeremiah Donati assessing the baseball program.
Yeah, well, a couple things is one, none of us, we all want the same thing, which is to get the program back on a trajectory and on a track, on a path to realize the success we've had in the past. I think, a couple things, and before I comment on that, is we got to be honest about where we are. And we were picked to finish 14th in the SEC. We finished 15th. If you look at the last 8 years, we've struggled to be in the upper echelon of the league. And so, we've had 3 coaches since we had our success in Omaha. And so all that to say is we've got work to do, and we had work to do a year ago, or, Paul's been here, I guess, almost exactly a year. And so, we all want to get back to the same place, but we got to be a little patient. When Paul got here, we knew, or I wasn't here at the time, obviously, but I think anyone who was really looking at this reasonably would tell you that you made a coaching change for a reason, and it's that we're rebuilding. And so obviously this year did not go as well as we'd hoped. And there's reasons for that. I'm not going to, I'm not just going to sit here and say we couldn't have coached better or played better. We could have done all those things better, and we will do those things better. But we needed more resources to invest in the program from an NIL rev share standpoint. We provided that. I think getting the players here earlier to get them involved in the strength and conditioning program would be huge. That was one noticeable kind of glaring impact I think that Coach Maneri found when he got here was just, since we had not been involved in those, to getting the new players here early and getting them involved in those programs would benefit us. And so we made the decision and investment to do that. And there's a number of other things. I mean, I think, the players, I think we've done a really good job in the portal thus far.
All right. So I guess, first of all, Jeremiah Donati in theory is right. Mm-hmm. You were picked 14th preseason and you finished 15th. So there wasn't a lot of expectation outside of Columbia for what the baseball team would do in 2025. But this was not a rebuild when Paul Maneri was hired.
No, and he wasn't an unproven coach that you brought in here that had to prove himself.
Right. Coach Maneri was brought in to take a good, solid program and get it back to being great again.
Yep.
Coach Maneri was not brought in to take a good, solid program and have it finish near the bottom of the SEC and start rebuilding.
With its worst season since joining this conference over 30 years ago.
So that's where I get where Jeremiah Donati's going, just in theory, but that was not the situation when Coach Maneri was hired. Hey, we're rebuilding.
Yeah.
No.
And again, look, we go back to the list of names of guys that were rumored to potentially be taking the job before Maneri ever took it, and none of those guys had the resume or pedigree that Maneri had coming in. If any of them came in and had the season that they had this year, wouldn't be thrilled about it, but I think there'd be a lot less vitriol because, okay, whoever that was came in here, had to adjust to the SEC, had to adjust to the roster, and didn't have a great year out of the gate. We'll see if your number 2's better. But again, when you're pounding the table and saying there's no rebuild, we're going to come in, we're going to go straight to the top, and then you do that, that's what upsets people.
Yeah, and the other part of it, I thought it's just a side to the other thing when Jeremiah Donati was talking about getting the guys in early to get them in the weightlifting program. According to the John Whittle post, they stopped lifting weights like that.
Which, again,
back.
Maybe you've now realized the error of your ways and you're going to go about it differently this year. That's what your hope is.
Yeah.
Because we don't want this program to fail, so you're hoping for the best the next year and hopefully learning your lessons of what you didn't do this year to do better next year.
Here's what you're hoping, that Coach Maneri in year 1 got the lay of the land for the SEC in 2025. And now knows, wow, I need guys who hit the ball out of the park and guys who throw real hard. And maybe he realizes we got to get in the weight room more, not less.
He's got his wish of all these players that have left, bringing in, they're in the double digits of guys they've signed from the portal so far. So you're flipping the roster. This is what you wanted. And go out there and be better.
Yeah, and, Coach Maneri now gets that look of okay, this is what we have to be next year. Now I get it. I didn't get it my first year. Here's what I thought. Well, I learned some things, and I'm going to evolve, and we're going to be different. Yeah. Like I heard it was the Oregon State head coach on SiriusXM when they started the NCAAs saying, hey, they asked about the power of the team hitting home runs. Is like, what's the key? He goes, the key is the weight room. Our guys got bigger and stronger, and now the ball they hit that died on the warning track is now going out of the park.
The stronger you are, the farther the ball's going to go.
Yes. So, again, hopefully everything that went wrong last year was a life lesson, and we're going to evolve from that and get this thing back in the right direction.
That's the hope you got to have. Because, again, nobody wants to see this program fail.
No.
But given what we've learned about this team, there's reasons why they failed this year that you hope get better next year.
All right, we'll get back and hear Jeremiah Donati talking about how he understands the baseball fans' frustration in what happened in 2025. And Jeremiah will address that next here on the Halftime Show. David Ayer, Terry Ford, Tyler Head till 3 on the game. All right, just in case you just woke up, Jeremiah Donati was on with the postgame show yesterday. That was a lot of sleeping if you think about it, if you missed that.
You know, catching up on sleep in the summertime, nothing wrong with that. If you're out of school, if you're a teacher and you don't have to get up early, why not? Sleep till 12:30.
Yeah, and so you missed the interview.
Yeah, okay. You can always go back and re-rack it.
That's right.
Listen to it again.
That's what on demand is,
or, you
man.
know,
Watch the video.
I cut it up and we listen back to it.
We didn't do jack. So, well, we'll get to a couple other headlines today, but let's stick with Jeremiah Donati for right now. We had Donati in the last segment when he was on with Jay and Elijah yesterday assessing the baseball program. Now, Donati goes a little bit farther because you just cut the answer up in two pieces. The other part of the answer that Jeremiah gave to Jay and Elijah was he understands the frustrations of the baseball fans going through what they did watching the 2025 Gamecock baseball squad. Hit cut 6, Dave.
I really like, even despite, our fans, being very vocal about their displeasure of the results, which, and candidly, I'd be upset if they weren't upset. That tells me they care. That tells me they want to get, back in a place that, we feel really proud about. And I know we can get there. So it just takes a little time. No one likes the P word, the patience word, but when the questions were coming about whether we were going to retain a coach after 1 year, I mean, that's just completely unheard of to move on from a coach. When you hire a coach, you're making an investment in him or her. You've got to give them a shot to be successful. And, what message are you sending to people if you give them no runway? I'll tell you, it would become a pretty undesirable place to work. And so you've got to understand people's passion for this. Trust me, I've been to Omaha 6 times, and I want to be back there as fast as possible too. But we've got to let Paul do his thing, and we've got to be a little patient. And I already like the way it's going. We've already up to a fast start in the transfer portal, and we've added some really good pieces. So more work to do, but that probably took the long way around the block there with you guys. But I think I like their attitude going in the offseason, and I feel much better about next year.
Look, I agree that, hiring a coach and then firing him after 1 year. I've always said this. If you hire a coach or a manager and you fire them after 1 year, you made a mistake. Mm-hmm. You screwed up. This isn't on you, the general manager, the athletic director, whoever. Because if you hire a guy and get rid of him in 1 year, you messed up. And somehow in the hiring process, you missed something.
Sure.
And so I understand the idea you want to give a guy more than 1 year. And I don't think we sat here, even when John Whittle's piece came out, we didn't sit here and say, well, you got to fire this guy. What we did say, though, is you got to really take a step back and have a come-to-Jesus conversation with Coach Maneri, if you're Jeremiah Donati, and say, okay, what have we learned from this year? Mm-hmm. How do we do better next year? And how much have you evolved after 1 year, knowing that the landscape is different? What's the game plan for year 2?
Yeah.
And according to Donati there, he likes the direction and the idea where they're going. That's fine because, yeah, getting rid of a guy after 1 year, you typically don't want to do that. But this was an awful, historically bad year.
It was an awful year, and there were obviously things within that story that could have been presented as for cause if you did want to go down that route. Again, talking about what happened with Eddie Copper and his recovery and all that kind of stuff, like that was pretty bad. And we kind of discussed at that point in time, like, hey, if you did want to make a move, here's potentially a ground for you to be able to do that. Obviously didn't end up happening. But yeah, typically you don't have to let coaches go after 1 year. But again, it wasn't the hire that he made, and this year was a disaster.
Yeah, and I think we brought that up too, that when we were going over all this and we're throwing everything out against the wall, this was not Donati's hire.
No.
And so that would have been the easy way out. You got the Copper situation, you have the historically bad baseball season, and you have the idea this guy wasn't my hire. He wasn't my dude.
Sure.
But I'll tell you, to be honest with you, I think another reason, well, there's a couple of reasons why that Paul Maneri's coming back for year 2. He's got a resume. This guy's got a hell of a resume. And I think that matters here. I think you give the benefit to the doubt. You give the benefit of the doubt to a guy who's been there, done that, right?
Sure.
So you look at it like, okay, man, you needed a year to get ramped up. Now you go into year 2. Now you can course correct. Mm-hmm. That's your thought. 2, let's just, can we, no one's listening, right? We're off the air. Dave's in commercials, right?
Nobody at all.
Dave's in commercials, right?
Yes.
they got this rev share thing, man. You want to spend the money to get rid of a coach and the staff, then you've got to hire another coach and another staff. That's money that's going to be spent not only this year, but for the next so many years, because you're paying, obviously, the new staff on whatever your contract. So you're spending that kind of money to get rid of this current staff. Yeah, you can go find the rich alum and rich boosters and rich fans, but if you take that money to do that, what are you taking that money away from now?
Yeah, and that's the juggling act that you have to have now, is because, again, all that money is encompassed under your athletic association budget, and especially in going into the first year of the revenue sharing, taking out almost a third of that chunk would hurt you quite a bit.
And I think a part of this as well is, if you're Jeremiah Donati, and again, if I was the AD, I would probably think the same way. Okay, look, I didn't hire the guy. This year was a disaster. But if we move on from him, X amount of dollars are going to be allocated now for that, which takes away dollars for this. I'll give him another year. He's a Hall of Fame coach. Give him another year to get this thing on the right track. And it gives me a year to get a hold of rev share.
Sure.
It gives me a year to see how quick the courts knock down this NIL clearinghouse ridiculousness. And I'll have a better idea of what I can and can't do this time next year.
But I hope in those conversations, and you know, I'm sure it was like, hey, we better not be having the same conversation next year.
I don't think,
because then I'm not going to be as forgiving, if at all.
I'll be honest with this: if you get a repeat of this
bad,
I think Coach Maneri will fire himself.
Maybe so, yeah. There's a part of him is like, well, I don't want to further tarnish my legacy by having this happen a third time.
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe he bows out at that point.
I mean, if this happens again, it's a no-brainer that there'll be a change. I mean, a no-brainer. So I think that some of that's involved in this too, is the world we live in right now. Athletically, you know, in collegiate sports, you like to get like a little bit of time in the new world to see what's going on.
Sure.
I think that also plays into this.
I'm just kind of trying to think here. I feel like, and this is encompassing all sports, we've been relatively quiet for the most part when it comes to overall firings this past offseason, football, baseball, basketball. Yeah, you've had coaches leave places and stuff like that. But compared to years past, I feel like not as many programs fired coaches this year, probably because of revenue sharing, wanting to hang on to that money, and obviously, like you said, trying to figure out what this is going to look like before you start, you know, rearranging the furniture again.
It feels like unless someone had no choice to kick somebody to the curb, there's a lot more patience being shown.
Lamonis and Mississippi State, they're in bad place.
Yeah.
So they're like, all right, you know, let's go ahead and do this.
We got to do it. And so I feel like that's a part of this that nobody really wants to talk about, because you know you don't want to ever think, well, we're just keeping a guy because of money. But I think I think it's a bucket of things. I think one is this guy's a Hall of Famer. He's got a resume. He knows what he knows what's up. But two, I do believe is, let's get a better grip on the revenue share world we're about to enter. Give us a year roughly, and this also gives him a year to show he can turn it around. But if we're still sitting in the same spot in 2026, then you make a change.
Sure.
I just feel like that's where it's going. All right, just in case you just woke up, there you go. I'll give you one, though. I'll give you a headline.
All right.
I'll give you a headline just in case you just woke up. It's just, I only have time for one of these, because we have two of these. You just shake your head. I'll just read you the headline. Ex-wide receiver Antonio Brown sought on attempted murder charge.
Oh.
Yeah. He shot a gun off during a celebrity boxing event, allegedly, last month in Miami. So now the warrant shows a charge of attempted murder with a firearm. Also, Brown has to pay $10,000 bond and remain on house arrest until trial. Now, of course, Brown has a different story. He said people were hassling him and grabbing at him or whatever, so he was trying to defend himself. Here's this. Antonio Brown again with an issue.
You know, there was a short period of time where I thought Antonio Brown's antics were just kind of an act. We're way past that now. This is clearly somebody that has a lot of problems.
There's a dude that has some issues.
Yes.
There's no doubt. And when you read, I think I told you, I read the deep dive of Brown's time in Pittsburgh and what they did to get him on the field on Sundays.
Yeah, it's like, if we can just get him to Sunday, get him to kickoff, we'll be all right. But getting him there was not easy.
Everybody bent in some way, shape, or form to get this guy on the field because he was so good.
He was a great player.
So good. And it's sad, man.
Up until when he just decided to walk off the field and take off his uniform in the process, he was a really good player.
I mean, even Tampa was trying to put up with him. So anyway, another Antonio Brown situation. All right, just in case you just woke up, we'll come back and we'll get our Firehouse Sub text the hour, 803-404-6100, the halftime show. Tyler Head, David Ayer, Terry Ford on the game. All right, 803-404-6100. What do you got there, Tyler Head?
Nameless Texter says the 30 for 30 on Antonio Brown's going to need to be a 20-parter.
Oh, no doubt. Wow. I mean, when I read this deep dive, I think it was ESPN, about Antonio Brown's time in Pittsburgh. They also went back to his time in college.
Mm-hmm. Central Michigan, right?
And one of the reasons he fell so far in the draft is, well, you see.
Yes.
Now we know. There was off-the-field concerns about him in college. But like anything, so you go, okay, I'm not going to take a flyer on him in the premium rounds.
Sure.
But, late in the draft, we'll take a shot at him. And if, we can get him, if we can coach him up, and if we can get him focused and locked in, we got a heck of a player.
Sure.
Now, here's the thing. They got a heck of a player who really wasn't focused and locked in.
No, he was not. But and that's the crazy thing. Like, think of how good he was. If he focused all of his time, attention, and energy on being a better player, how phenomenal could he have been?
Yeah. I mean, he is. If you take away all the baggage, and by the way, there's a plane full of baggage, right?
Yeah, of course.
You take away the baggage and just look at his numbers and stats, you turn on the tape and watch him play, that's a Hall of Famer.
Oh, undoubtedly.
That's a Hall of Famer.
Well, what he did was ridiculous. The athleticism and obviously some of those great Pittsburgh teams that he was a part of, it's unreal. And again, we didn't really know about the crazier side of him until he finally left.
Yeah, I remember even Tomlin, we talk about Mike Tomlin, the rugged Mike Tomlin, no BS Mike Tomlin. Even Tomlin let him come to meetings late.
Sure.
And Tomlin kind of took a step back and handled him in a way that you would never think Mike Tomlin would deal with a football player.
But when you're that good,
and that's
you'll
what
make exceptions.
And that's what Tomlin did. And that team also had Le'Veon Bell, who could be an issue at times. And if you're Tomlin, you're like sitting there saying, okay, Brown's stupid good and he's special. I'm going to go against everything I believe in to get this guy on the field on Sundays, because at the end of the day, the name of the game is winning.
Of course.
And it is. Look, whether it's professionally, collegiately, look, it's about W's.
Yeah.
And Antonio Brown helped you, in the words of Jameis Winston, eat W's.
It's the story again of Jimmy Johnson being asked about, if Troy Aikman fell asleep in a meeting, what would happen? I go over there and wake him up.
Yeah, I give him a pillow.
Wake him up, Troy.
Give him a pillow.
Yeah, I'd cut the backup left tackle, but I'm going to wake Troy up. Because, again, different players, depending on what they mean to your organization, do get exceptions.
You send a message by cutting that backup left tackle that fell asleep.
You're not cutting Troy Aikman.
You ain't cutting Troy.
And again, you understand how valuable Antonio Brown is. Like, all right, he's a pain in the butt. If we can get him to Sunday, he's going to be good.
Right. And it's just sort of like we always talk about with coaches. Whenever a coach gets fired, at times they look for all these reasons. Oh, and academically the students just weren't performing in the classroom. If you just would have went 12-0, you wouldn't have given a bleep what the GPA was of the football team.
Yeah. In fact, if you went 12-0, you'd be fudging some grades to make sure those guys are eligible.
Exactly.
Or just coming up with fake classes like they do in North Carolina.
It's just, I always get a kick out of that one. But because look, no one will ever say, you'll never, I've always said you'll never hear this press conference. Yeah, coach is 3-42, but all of his players have a GPA of 3.5 or higher, so we just gave him a contract extension.
I don't remember 100,000 people showing up to watch a kid take a test, like Muschamp said that time.
And that's the thing. It's just, you will bend yourself to get W's. And Antonio Brown helped bring you W's. And it got so bad that you had to say this: we don't care how many W's we can get. We got to get this guy out of our locker room.
That happened with the Raiders. Eventually happened with the Buccaneers as well.
Remember, he was recording John Gruden's phone call.
Yes, and he did the thing where he froze his feet. It was all weird.
Yeah, bizarre. All right, that's coming up. More football in the 1 o'clock hour on The Game. Halftime show. Terry Ford, Tyler Head rolling this baby up until 3 here on the game. Time to talk nothing but football in the 1 o'clock hour like we always do, sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors here on the game. And we've had a lot so far. We've really focused on Jeremiah Donati, the athletic director. We appreciate Jeremiah popping on with Jay and Elijah. It's the second time that the athletic director, Jeremiah Donati, has jumped on the post-game show. And again, we appreciate him coming on, giving us his thoughts about the athletic department in general. So thank you very much for that. Let's go to cut 2 here, Dave. Because now that we are in this new world of rev share, it's going to be, all right, we believe roughly 75% is football, 15% men's basketball, 5% women's basketball, and 5% something else.
And this is based on what other schools have let out. Like Georgia was the first one. A few other schools are like, hey, here's how we're splitting it up. Not exactly the end-all be-all for everyone, but roughly the idea of what most programs are going to be looking like.
Like other schools would do it in different ways. Now, the thing about South Carolina is obviously you want your football program to be as good as it can be. So you've got to take a majority of this money to go to football.
Yes.
You have stated that you want your men's basketball program to be a perennial contender to go to the NCAA tournament.
Right.
2 out of the 3 years under Lamont, it hasn't been. 1 year you did go to the NCAA tournament. So you're going to put dollars toward the basketball program because, again, the second highest revenue-generating sport in collegiate athletics is what?
Men's basketball, yes, and good players don't come and play for free.
No, they don't. So you're going to put money toward men's basketball. Here's the issue. You have this thing called the best women's program in America over the last 5 years.
Yes.
With a high-profile head coach in Dawn Staley. So you want to continue having one of the best women's basketball programs in the country, if not the best, right?
Correct.
Is that free?
No, it is not.
Not free. All right, baseball. You have been traditionally a really good to great baseball program. You have won multiple World Series. You played for the championship other times as well. And you want to get back to that, right?
Yes.
Is that free?
No, it's not.
All right, so how are we going to do this, Tyler?
This is like those scenarios, I don't know if you've ever played these games where it's like, okay, I'm going to give you a $40 budget. Here's all these different NFL players. Each one has a different number value. Build your roster. And you can go out there and get, a $10 quarterback, a $10 wide receiver, a $10 running back, a $10, defensive end. Oh, you're out of money. You got to budget it better than
Four
that.
guys.
Like that's kind of thing here is you got to figure out how to circumvent this to put yourself in the best situation with all teams while staying under this number.
And really the key to this, in a lot of ways, are the collectives. Because what you can't get in rev share, you need to get through collectives.
Yes.
But there's a problem. There's this new thing in collectives where you have to go through basically a clearinghouse for NIL deals.
Which he did mention in the clip I played earlier. They have had one submission so far for an unnamed football player in an autograph session, which I think that'll be fine because that does fall under what they would probably deem to be a good NIL deal.
So you're going to have to, because look, the rev share is the rev share. You can't find ways to bend the rules on the rev share. So you're going to have to find ways to get creative with your NIL collective deals.
Yep.
And with this $600 cap that the NCAA has put on them temporarily, because that's not going to stand up in court, but for however long that's there, now you got to get creative how you do your NIL/collective deals.
Yes.
But that is where you need to get the money.
The ones that are probably not as straightforward and legit as this clearinghouse wants them to be.
Right. Basically, the clearinghouse will say, well, that's clearly just a pay-for-play.
Yes, that's the one. It's like, yes, you're not wrong, but we still want to do this. How do you make that happen?
Now, again, we know that this is going to go to court and this is going to get overturned.
Of course.
Because you're limiting an athlete's ability to earn their full potential. And Tyler, what does that do?
Violates the Sherman Antitrust Act of 1892, which I know far too much about.
So do I. How funny is it you know the year?
Yeah.
All right, so here is Jeremiah Donati talking about what changes with the collectives and the NIL moving forward in the rev share world. Cut 2, Dave.
Yeah, it changes it significantly in the sense that, I think one of the questions that fans have or that I've heard is that they say, well, how are these NIL deals how are they going to pass? What are we going to do about NIL? And the answer is, well, we're taking on that role of paying the players because NIL the last couple of years has not been NIL. It's been pay for play. The value of a player has been the value to the team, not the marketing value, which is what NIL was intended to be. So, that's quite a shift in mindset. And so getting our fans there, getting all fans there, getting our players there, getting our coaches there is just going to take a little time. And so, back to your question about NIL collectives, they're going to look different because they're just not going to be able to operate as they were. There was some statistic as Deloitte was creating this clearinghouse product, this NIL Go. The data they had looked at looking backwards, there was over 70% of those deals would not have passed muster because they were way above market for the value of services just candidly was nowhere even in the ballpark. And so that's going to be a market correction that we're all going to have to just live with and accept and understand that NIL is not going to be as much of a recruiting tool as it has been in the past. And I think, the downstream effects of that is that will tamp down, I think, some of the transfer portal activity we saw, which I think is probably a good thing. One, just because there will be, not as much chaos in the system, but two, we got to remember that all of our student athletes are students as well. And so to think about transferring 3 or 4 or 5 times in your college career is just not setting a young man or a young woman up for success. And so I think, I'm not saying that transferring is a bad idea. I think if there's a better place for you, then by all means you should be able to go explore that. But I think when you're really talking about going someplace and leaving year after year after year, I don't think that's in the best interest of any student athlete.
Basically being a mercenary.
Yeah.
That's what he's talking about. And look, if the NCAA finds a way to keep this clearinghouse, which I don't think they will, yes, you're going to have to now, guess what happens? You know who comes back, in my opinion? Our buddy, the bagman.
Bagman under the table,
yep.
Drive-throughs, drop locations, those kind of things.
Jeremy Pruitt.
Yeah, because again, you're just like, all right, well, if you don't want to allow us to do these deals that are these direct payments to players that aren't your traditional idea of NIL, they're going to find a way around it.
Yeah.
And in a weird way, we revert back to the old days that a lot of people clamor for, by the way. Like, I'd just rather have these kids paying on our table. Okay, we might get your wish.
And people will feel better. They'll go, yeah. Because not everybody wants to be. You know what, Tyler? Let me ask you this. Do you want to go in every kitchen and see how your food's made?
No. They say ignorance is bliss, right?
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes, and the funny thing about that era of college football was it was always pointing fingers at other programs. Like, I can't believe they're doing that. Like, as if your program wasn't doing that too.
Oh, my favorite, my favorite team would never do that,
My favorite team
Tyler.
is clean as a whistle. Well, it's Tennessee.
Never.
It's Tennessee that's doing it wrong.
That's right. Exactly. Like the old Southwestern Conference.
Yes.
They're doing all sorts of cheating in Oklahoma. Here at SMU, we ain't doing anything.
No, they just had an overstock of Trans Ams that they just had to give away.
Exactly.
So all those players got them for real cheap.
They worked hard.
They worked hard.
Their part-time jobs.
because he works as a fry cook at McDonald's, on the off season. Mm-hmm. That's how he afforded it.
He saved his money like a good boy does, like a good college boy does. So we might get the bagman back.
Yeah.
Because trust me, this isn't going to stop.
Right. And by the I appreciate the fact that Jeremiah Donati was not shy about saying, yeah, it was pay for play. Mm-hmm. Like, he's not BSing. Like, he was telling the truth.
That's the one thing I like about Jeremiah Donati so far. Look, he can't tell us everything. We get it.
Yeah.
But he has been more transparent and honest than most of these athletic directors are. And he does say things like, he might have slipped. He called it a cap yesterday.
Yeah.
They're trying to get away from using that word because you know what that does? That caps earnings. What does that do, Tyler?
Violates antitrust. Like everything. And how do we avoid antitrust violations?
Grab your shot glass. We collectively bargain.
There it is.
We collectively bargain. So this is where it's going. And I think there are fans who will go, yes, let's go back to paying them under the table. I don't want to hear about this anymore. No.
Because see, back then, until somebody got caught, it was always just hearsay and rumors.
Right, exactly.
Like, oh, I heard he's getting X amount of dollars to go to that school, but you never really knew, right?
Right.
Until, again, it blew up and suddenly a team was getting sanctioned for violating those things.
And you heard Donati say 70% of the deals that are going on now would be blocked.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this. So of those 70%, how many of them then will be under the table?
Out of the 70%, 100 of them.
Yes.
It's like, all right, because again, it's like, okay, you may, and here's the thing too, is like, we don't even have a clear, defined, like, okay, well, if I have a deal and I don't submit it to the clearinghouse, what happens? What's the punishment here? I don't think that's been clearly outlined of, okay, well, if we find out you've been doing this deal and you didn't submit it, we're going to do this to you. Like, I don't know what that is.
No one does, because again, we've also seen the NCAA go to court. And who are they again?
Glass Joe from the Mike Tyson Punch-Out games.
Oh, yeah, pretty much.
He at least had one win. He was 1 in 99.
Well, that's like the Washington Generals. They're 1 in like $7 billion against the Globetrotters.
And I think it was his opponent got so exhausted beating him up, he collapsed, and Glass Joe won because of that.
All right, so that is where it's at with the collectives right now. But you're circling back. You need to. And however this collective world's going to end up, whether it's going to come back to what we see now, or if they can somehow hold on to this clearinghouse stuff, that's where you're going to get money to be able to fund your baseball program and your women's basketball program. If you truly are going to spend the money to be good at men's basketball and football.
What they call it, the slush fund, where you take it off the top. Like, here's the excess, and this is what you have that's going to, because again, most, especially in the SEC, pretty much everybody's going to be able to spend up to the $20.5 million.
Oh, sure.
Like, there's no program out there, and this conference is not going to do that. What sets you apart is, okay, what do you do on top of that? And again, how do you, if you're trying to go along with these rules, circumvent it to make these deals legit, that they're going to be approved and can be done and all that kind of stuff? Because again, I can't just say, hey, Terry, you're a 5-star quarterback. Here's $10 million to come play for my school.
Right.
I guess I could say, Terry, I need you at my kid's birthday party. Here's $10 million for the appearance.
Right.
I guess that could work.
Yes.
Though they'd probably shoot that one down.
You see the clearinghouse guy. Let's see here. So you're going to get, you're working a part-time job. Oh, okay. What are you doing for your name, image, and likeness? Oh, I'm sorry, name, image, and likeness. Oh, you're doing a kid's birthday party.
That's actually a good, like,
$10 million?
How many athletes suddenly get part-time jobs now?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, he's gonna help us out at our law firm.
What are you paying him?
$8 million. What are you paying your other interns? Nothing.
Nothing. He's a special intern.
Maybe that's the way around this. Maybe through the guise of, I don't know, working at the local restaurant down the street from the school. It's like, he just gets a lot of tips.
Or, he started to work for the nonprofit.
Yes.
Doing good deeds for everyone.
Sure.
He's volunteering, kind of, sort of, but he's also on the, we've hired him. What are you paying him? $7 million.
And look, we're spitballing here, but these are probably ideas people have of like, all right, well, let's see how we can find our way around this.
Yes. Yeah. Everyone's going to look for a workaround.
He worked.
Yes.
He worked real hard down at the library. We thought that warranted $5 million.
All right, it's nothing but football. The 1 o'clock hour, sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors here on the game. Hey, we are celebrating Father's Day here on the game. You can go to 1075thegame.com's Facebook page today and tomorrow. You have until tomorrow at 7 p.m. Look at the baby/young adult photos of our air staff. Try to guess on each photo who they are. Whoever gets the most guesses correct will win the first prize, which is a beer card valued at $275 and a family 4-pack of tickets to go check out the Fireflies. Second prize is a $75 gift certificate to Brooklyn Banquet and Conference Center. So again, go to our Facebook page, do some guessing, see if you can win, and that goes until 7 p.m. tomorrow. We'll come back. More Jeremiah Donati. The Rashul FAISON situation is frustrating. We'll hear from the AD Donati about what's going on with that issue next here on the Halftime Show on the game. Halftime show, we yap football in the 1 o'clock hour. Like always, it's sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors here on the game. All right, coming up at 2:15, our buddy Scott Hamilton, columnist, Post-Courier. I think the only columnist left in the state, right, Dave? There's no other sports columnist in the state, but Hamilton.
In the state or at the state?
In the state of South Carolina. No other newspaper has a sports columnist whose job is just to write columns like the old days.
Oh, that.
Yeah. He's the only old school columnist left, right, in the state. Anybody else?
What's David Cloninger?
State of South Carolina, Dave. David Cloninger's not. I don't think he's a columnist. I think he covers the beat.
Reporter.
Yeah, more of a beat reporter. An opinionated beat reporter is David Cloninger.
Oh, he's opinionated, all right. Ask him about Rock Hill.
So our buddy Scott Hamilton, 2:15 and 2:30. We're going to preempt the greatest day in the history of the world to get John Hale on from the Lexington Herald Leader in Lexington, Kentucky, to find out about the state of the Kentucky football program. Vince Morrow, who was Mark Stoops' longtime right-hand man, peaced out. And to me, is that a red flag saying that old Vince wants to jump off a sinking ship before the Titanic hits the iceberg? And we're going to find out. So we will be talking to John Hale, who covers Kentucky football for the Lexington Herald Leader. Again, that's coming up at 2:30. Stoops makes $9 million.
Yeah, he's like top 10
nationally.
Coaches paid
fifth
nationally.
In the SEC.
I think if we stacked up the records of all those coaches, he'd be towards the bottom.
He'd be the bottom.
He'd be the bottom.
He would be the bottom. He has a losing record in conference.
Yeah. And look, has he popped and had some good 9-ish win seasons and gone to, Outback Bowls or whatever? Sure. But given what he's paid, how long he's been there, I can't say the results that he's given have warranted what he earns.
No, do not disagree. So we'll talk to John Hale from the Lexington Herald Leader at 2:30. All right, as we yip and yap about football, and really we're kind of making it a bigger thing than just football. It's football with a little sprinkling of collegiate athletics today. Jeremiah Donati was on the postgame show yesterday with Jay and Elijah, talking about a bunch of different things. And Rasul Faison came up. This has gotten to the point of asinine and ridiculous.
Oh, totally. We're 6 months into this.
I mean, look, we don't need to rehash it, but just to say Faison is going down the same path that Diego Pavia at Vanderbilt. Played JUCO, should have a year of eligibility left. If Pavia's on the field, Faison should be on the field. Does that sound fair?
I don't see why not.
You think this is an easy no-brainer, unless there's something we don't know.
Which, according to everybody, including Coach Beamer, they've submitted everything that's been asked of them.
So this thing makes no sense. So Jeremiah Donati was asked about the Rasul Faison situation yesterday by Jay and Elijah, and here is Jeremiah's answer. Hit it, Dave. That's cut 9.
Well, just that we don't have a final decision yet. I think I've seen cases or I've seen circumstances that were nearly not as extreme as his that were approved. And so I think that's why you can sense the frustration in Coach Beamer's voice and even in mine. So we still remain optimistic. I mean, the young man loves it here. He's dying to play. He's a great young man. We were all really excited about him being here. He certainly deserves a chance. And when you look at the circumstances surrounding his case and the situation, this is kind of an easy one, to be honest. And so I think that's what you can hear back to the frustration in Shane's voice. We thought this was going to be done, months ago. And so, we're going to keep fighting the good fight. And you'd mentioned that, he's got an attorney behind him who knows the game and knows this stuff pretty well. And so we feel good about that. And we remain optimistic, but just frustrated for him. I mean, he's a young man that came here and wants to continue his career in a Gamecock uniform, and so to kind of be in this limbo is hard. It's hard for young people, and so I hope for his sake, for all of our sake, that we can come to a good decision here as soon as possible.
Yes, I agree 150%.
Please, again, we didn't think we'd be halfway through June still talking about this, but here we are.
You know what we have to stop doing? As long as there still is an NCAA in some way, shape, or form, we have to stop assuming anything.
That's fair. You know, it could be something as stupid as the fact that the paperwork's on the bottom of a bunch of other paperwork.
It could be.
And they're just like, we'll get there.
Yeah, or gum got stuck to the paper and it got
put in the wrong file.
Yeah, exactly. Just.
And then whenever, if they do eventually approve him, much like they did with the Tez Walker thing a couple years ago, North Carolina, they finally gave us this other piece of paper.
Remember that?
Last week, and North Carolina's like, no, we gave that to you months ago. What are you talking about?
You've had everything.
Yeah, because they tried to deflect like, well, we didn't have everything we needed. No, you did. Everything you asked of us, we gave to you.
And you still failed miserably. It just.
By the way, he did end up suing them, I believe, for the 6 weeks or whatever he didn't get to play because that affected his ability to earn through NIL, which guess what? Violates his antitrust.
What year was the Sherman Antitrust Act?
1892. I once said 1842, but it all circles back at the end of the day. And again, going back to adding Isaiah Augustov out of the portal from Colorado, like that's not an indication one way or the other of how this is going to go. But at some point, you start to worry, like, okay, well, if we're not going to get an answer after 6 months, we're less than 90 days to kickoff. Who said it's going to happen between now and then?
You look at this point, and look, we talked about this. Adding a running back doesn't mean you don't think Faison's going to, be eligible, but you can't sit around and just assume it's going to work because look how long this thing has gone so far. You got to do something to get proactive. So you go get a running back in the portal who, again, we said this yesterday, for when you got a running back of this ilk who can help you this late in the process is a good thing. Hopefully he's just part of your depth and you don't have to, not have Rasul Faison. So we'll see. But it's an absolute ridiculously frustrating. We just sit here and go, seriously?
Yeah.
How'd you like to be? No wonder when you hear Beamer. You can hear it in Beamer's voice. He's tired. I mean, I get it. I totally understand.
If we... we're a month away from media days. If we get to media days and this has not been decided yet, how is he going to answer that question there?
You know what? That would be entertaining. Absolutely. His head might blow off. It might be worse than when he was yelling at Bielma.
Yeah, it's because of course Cloninger got to get the first question. Coach, any update on Rasul?
Mount St. Shane erupting lava. All right. Lots about football in the 1 o'clock hour, sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors. We'll get back to Jeremiah Donati, some more of his comments with Jay and Elijah yesterday. We'll focus on splitting revenue between sports. Obviously, football is going to get a bulk. We'll hear what Jeremiah Donati says about sharing revenue. That'll be cut 3, by the way, Dave, in the next break. All right. That'll be what's up next here as we talk football in the 1 o'clock hour, sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors on the halftime show here on the Game. Talking a lot of football in the 1 o'clock hour, sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors here on The Game. Tyler Head, David Ayer, Terry Ford as we go till 3. Then the post-game show with Jay and Elijah will take over here on The Game. All right, so as we continue on with Jeremiah Donati's comments, I want to hit one more in this hour. Talking about keeping the coaches, well, about splitting the rev share is what I want to get. Cut 3, Dave. Where Donati talks about how you're going to split the money. Look, the model we're seeing that other schools have kind of let this out, 75% football, 15% men's basketball, the two revenue generators, then 5% to women's basketball. Even though women's basketball has gained popularity, it's still not a revenue-generating sport.
Yep.
And then the other 5%, baseball, volleyball, whatever you want to put the money to, is in that last 5%. Here's Jeremiah Donati talking about splitting revenue between sports. Cut 3, Dave.
No, we're just not privy to, just for this reason. It's this won't surprise you. It's proprietary just for competitive reasons. You can imagine that any number you put out there becomes a target for a competitor. So our numbers are all very healthy. We've announced we're at the top of the, we'll fully participate. But for competitive and proprietary reasons, you're not going to see any athletic departments announce what they're doing. In fact, a couple of my colleagues who did that earlier in the spring have since backtracked on that. So, I'm not trying to be coy with you all. It's just something that we're going to keep in house for now. And so, but I think all of our coaches would tell you they feel good about it. And what's interesting too is that just for this year, there was an interesting loophole that a lot of us took advantage of, and that is, if you were able to front load some of these contracts before the rules changed, you could kind of change the proportionality of those distributions for this year only. In other words, if you were able to, say, front load some football contracts with before the rules changed, you could take some of football's rev share and give it to a sport like baseball, for example. So that's probably the best and clearest example I could give you. But so what I'm telling you is that those percentages will be a little different this year than they will be traditionally in the future. Okay. Anyway.
Yeah, we had this conversation yesterday, I think, about front-loading deals before July 1st.
Yep.
Because that way you can get away with it just for this year. So this year, I think that's one reason we've seen, I lost track, 65 guys out of the portal have signed with South Carolina.
Yeah, that sounds about right, I think.
So they've put about 10 deals together in the NIL space, because they can front load these deals. Now, if you front load football deals, and a lot of people are, like what Donati was saying, now you can take the money that you were going to allocate to football and you can move it somewhere else because you front loaded these deals. Now, after this year, no, it's done.
Yeah,
in theory.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because when you talk about the coaches, and you mentioned, that hey, everybody's good with what they're doing right now. Over time, and maybe not necessarily the football, because again, they're going to get the bulk of the revenue at just about every single school, at least where football's major at. But you talk about these other sports: baseball, men's basketball, women's basketball, and maybe not necessarily here at South Carolina. But how long until coaches start looking at those other sports, be like, hey, they've only done X amount in the past 3 years. Well, we're doing this. Maybe we need to adjust these numbers more towards us instead of them because we're doing better. And these kind of things are going to come up, right? It's going to be very hard to keep all these coaches satisfied, again, when you're literally drawing a pie chart out saying you're getting this, that sport's getting that, and that sport's getting that.
Are these guys competitive at all?
No, not at all. They didn't make it at the highest level of college coaching by being competitive.
You think they're judged on one-loss record?
Absolutely.
What helps you get more wins in today's world of college athletics?
Having the money to get talent.
Just saying.
So,
to your point, sir.
Yeah.
Everybody's okay now. We'll see once it gets moving forward.
Because let's say, again, hypothetical scenario here that, next year, baseball has another really bad season, but men's basketball, is on the cusp of making the tournament, but doesn't quite get there. And Coach Paris, again, hypothetical scenario, says, hey, maybe instead of giving so much money to baseball, give us a little bit more here to get us into the tournament. You know what I mean? Because we're right there. Baseball's a long way away.
And ready? We make money.
We make money. We're more of a revenue-generating sport than that one is, so you need to put more money towards us instead of baseball.
And that's where it's going.
These are things that are going to happen.
And one thing also, can you lose coaches? Like, for an example, let's go to Kentucky. We've been yapping about Kentucky on and off. Mark Stoops is obviously second fiddle on campus.
Sure.
To basketball. Football will never overtake basketball at Kentucky, ever.
Nope.
So our guess is that men's basketball at Kentucky will get more rev share money than a lot of basketball programs in the SEC, right?
Yep, probably.
Especially if this whole collective clearinghouse thing's going on.
Yep.
So let's say Mark Stoops didn't crater last year. Let's say Stoops is still the guy. He's winning 6, 7 games. Occasionally he'll win 10 or 9 or something. You look and say, I'm never going to get what I could get at other schools here.
Mm-hmm.
I need to go. I need to go to a football school that's going to give me all the rev share money that I need.
Yeah.
That could be a consequence of this with other sports because of how the rev share is going to go down on each campus.
Remember Kenny Dillingham's new contract where he said in it specifically, Arizona State, you have to guarantee me you're going to play up to the full amount in this new era of revenue sharing. Well, and again, this can go for any sport. Pick whichever one you want. What's stopping a coach from saying, hey, you need to guarantee me I'm going to get X percentage of revenue, at least X percentage of revenue sharing every single year for my sport. If it dips below that, I'm gone.
Yeah, I think that's going to go in these contracts. You're going to say either a percentage or X amount of million you're giving me every year. And that's where it's going to go, I guarantee you.
Right.
Because you as a coach, especially in the secondary sports.
Yeah.
I mean, like if you're the head coach at South Carolina in baseball, you want to know you're getting X amount of money every year to compete.
And again, we're talking about small percentages here, but that's the difference in millions of dollars that, again, for a sport like baseball, can be a huge difference.
Oh, sure.
Extra $1 million, that can buy you 3, 4 high-level players possibly.
You can do okay with an extra $1 million. There's no doubt. So that's where this thing is going. And right now the coaches are going, yeah, we're in. Once everything gets cooking for real, this is going to be a thing. There's no doubt. We're talking about football in the 1 o'clock hour, sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors. Brock Lesnar played football, right?
Yes, he did. Well, so here's the funny thing. Brock Lesnar not played football in college, but at one point in his wrestling career decided he wanted to try out for the NFL, so he just did.
I know, remember that?
Did actually make the Vikings team.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
We were just looking up because they were showing Brock Lesnar's daughter competing in track and field.
Yes. Sure this is his daughter?
I don't know. I don't know.
They look a lot alike.
Yeah. Yes.
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 She got a lot of her dad's
she did.
genes.
Yes, she did. Yes, she did.
And she just won a national championship at shot put.
Yep. And she can throw the shot. She can throw the shot put. There's no doubt.
And can probably suplex you pretty well too.
While holding a shot put.
While holding a shot put.
Yes. All right, we're doing a lot of football talk here in the 1 o'clock hour, sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors. Wisconsin athletic program placed a 1-year probation, fined $25,000, football program, I should say, after an NCAA investigation showed, you ready for this, Tyler? 9 coaches and staffers made impermissible phone calls to recruits in 2023. Former defensive line coach Greg Scruggs, former director of player personnel Max Steinecker received 1-year show cause order. Scruggs is now an assistant D-line coach with the 49ers. Steinecker is USC's executive, or Southern Cal, rather, their executive director of personnel. Making impermissible phone calls.
Yeah, as much as, we're not in the era of, hey, you signed that autograph and got $10 for it, and now you're suspended for the year. We're still very much in the, hey, you talked to this recruit at the wrong time, and now you're in trouble for it.
And, again, do we now, in the world we live in, go, seriously?
Yeah,
really?
Maybe at some point we're like, hey, you know what? It's free reign. Talk to him whatever you want to talk to him.
I mean, rules, I get it. You knew it was a rule and you broke it knowingly, so you're in trouble for knowingly breaking a rule. Then we can have a conversation if the rule makes sense or not. But you did break the rule. You knew you were breaking a rule.
Sure.
But, when you read it, I can't help myself. And where we're at now, and I go, impermissible phone calls to recruits in 2023.
Yeah.
Obviously, these guys did not get the proper burner phones.
No, and again, you can look back on the timing of every text message and phone call now, so these things are easy to figure out, I guess. So, yeah, you gotta be careful with that still.
Firehouse Sub text the hour next, 803-404-6100, as we roll the halftime show. Do another football in the 1 o'clock hour, sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors. David Ayer, Tyler Head, Terry Ford till 3 on the game. All right, time to get our Firehouse sub text the hour, 803-404-6100. What do you got there, Tyler Head?
Nameless texter, wouldn't be surprised to see situations like this throughout the SEC involving football since Greg Sankey announced that football is moving from the NCAA in the future, if I'm not mistaken. I don't think he specifically said that. I think there's a lot of alluding to it could possibly happen. And if they don't like the direction this is going, they'll be like, okay, we'll go do our own thing.
Well, that's really to the texter's point. I think Greg Sankey is flying the test balloons.
Yeah, and I think we also have to this College Sports Commission is its own thing that's going to oversee this clearinghouse. That's not technically the NCAA. Like the NCAA is really only there for eligibility, which, as we've seen, they can't even get that right.
Yeah.
So this is kind of a new thing, a new entity that the CSC is that's going to oversee these deals.
Well, this new entity is your first step to breaking away from the NCAA.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's your first step.
They got the guy from Major League Baseball to come in as the CEO, and that if there was ever going to be a new governing body, if we even call it that at that point in time, this kind of seems like the building blocks for that.
Yeah, it feels like that's where it's going. This is your putting your toe in the water.
Yeah.
Just getting a little taste of the water.
And by the way, that CEO was appointed by the conferences.
Yeah, it was not by the NCAA.
It's just like when, the league owners appoint a new commissioner for the NFL or whatever, he works for the leagues,
but
basically.
Charlie Baker didn't hire this guy.
No, Charlie Baker, and the Charlie Baker quotes this week, since this has happened, are like, bro, are you aware of what's happening? Because it's almost like he's trying. It's like, you ever have that friend that's kind of on the edge of your friend group that tries to involve themselves in things that are happening?
Right.
That's kind of what the NCAA is doing. It's like, yeah, we think it's a great idea. We're happy to be a part of it. Like, you're not really a part of it, though.
No, really, this is happening because you were so bad.
Yeah, this is your fault. Now, not specifically Charlie Baker's, because he came in well after the damage was done, but the entity of the NCAA, Mark Emmert sat on his hands, and Feinbaum said it the other week on SportsCenter that he basically proclaimed that student athletes get paid over my cold dead body. Well, guess what? Mark Emmert's still alive, and the NCAA barely is.
Right, and the idea with Emmert, it was Emmert, but to the bigger picture of it, it's the people above Emmert who were the ones that were making sure that we're trying to make sure this never happened.
He was the puppet.
He was the puppet for all commissioners or whatever are. But the bottom line was, Emmert took the punches and looked like the boob.
Yes.
And even Baker said this week, that the NCAA screwed this up by not being proactive in the past.
Duh.
He said it.
You could have gotten well ahead of this.
Yeah, and this wouldn't be the FUBAR that it is today if you would have got ahead of the game and said, look, eventually our gravy train is going to dry up. We got to find other gravy trains.
And as soon as, because I said the eligibility, they also host tournaments. They control everything outside of the college football playoff at this point. But the second they lose, the men's basketball tournament, as soon as the power conferences decide they're going to do their own thing, they're done. They're cooked.
That's coming.
Yeah.
Once because the focus is football, and football.
Yes.
But once everybody takes a step back, they're going to go, wait a minute. How much money does that NCAA tournament make again?
Yeah, we'll just do that ourselves.
Why don't we do that? And that's going to happen, and that's when the NCAA just becomes...
And, if you want to have a tournament of nothing but mid-major conferences, congratulations. Nobody's going to watch.
Have at it. And so, at the end of the day, it is sad that because you're so greedy.
Yes.
You were so greedy, instead of... And I'm just making up numbers. Instead of just getting $1 billion, you still wanted to fight for the $2 billion.
Sure, because it's more.
Yeah, and that's how greedy you were. Even though you knew eventually if you didn't drop down and maybe do something else, take less, pick up another model that was going to involve compensating the players, you knew this could come, would happen.
Sure.
But you're so greedy that you wouldn't take a step back for the overall good of your cause.
We talk about it so much because, again, they were getting away with this for 100 years until the Supreme Court was like, hey, by the way, this is illegal, right? We all agree on that. There had to have been at least some time in those meetings at NCAA headquarters where they looked around and said, can you believe we're still getting away with this? Can you believe they've not caught on the fact that we're doing something illegal here?
Mm-hmm. Well, there was anybody in that organization who would stand up and say, guys, we got to stop doing this because at some point everybody's going to figure us out. Yeah, good idea. You're fired.
Yeah. Oh, they mysteriously went missing.
Yeah. All of a sudden, can't find Johnny anymore. What happened to him? And that's just the way they've gone. So now you have basically made your bed, like the texter was talking about on our Firehouse Sub text line. Sankey is dropping those, hints here and there that, we could break away and just go do our own thing and screw you guys.
Yeah, it's little Easter eggs like, well, that's interesting. And then years down the line, we're like, there it was. He was teasing us. He was letting us know.
And it's coming. And if the minute that these power conferences feel like it's in their best interest, they're going.
Yes.
Or the SEC and the Big Ten will just go and say, screw the rest of you.
Yeah, and hey, if you want to tag along, come on. If not, we're fine.
Yeah, so thank you for the text, like always, 803-404-6100. We will have what's trending at 2 coming up next. A little back-to-back guest action. Scott Hamilton, columnist from the Post and Courier, will jump in. And also a special guest, John Hale from the Lexington Herald Leader, will give us a little insight on what's going on with Kentucky football. That's coming up on the game. What's trending at 2, sponsored by Traditions Fine Jewelry, Gamecock Traditions here on the halftime show. Coming up 2:15, Scott Hamilton, Post-Courier columnist. We'll talk more about rev sharing in the world of college athletics moving forward with the House settlement. We'll get Scott's thoughts. 2:30, John Hale from the Lexington Herald-Leader. Give us a little insight what's going on with Kentucky football. We feel like the hottest seat in the conference is in Lexington, Kentucky. Mark Stoops, or one of the hottest seats.
One of the hottest.
Who's hotter? Venables?
I think Venables, given the expectations, is probably the hottest.
Venables probably has the hottest seat.
Uncle Sam's pretty hot.
I think Uncle Sam...
Napier's never far away from that hot seat.
I think Napier bought himself. I think his butt's a little cooler than Stoops now after last year.
Well, wait until they go 3-0. Then it'll turn right back up.
Uncle Sam at least went to a bowl game.
Yeah.
Kalen DeBoer. I mean, look,
that's always going
to be hot.
Yeah, until you win a national championship.
But Stoops is in the conversation of one of the hottest seats in the SEC.
Yeah, so, and really, I mean, kind of has been for a while. Like, he's always like is this the year that they finally say enough is enough and move on from him?
But he's always done just enough, right?
Yeah, that's what it kind of feels like. It's okay, he'll have a couple bad seasons in a row, boom, 8 or 9 wins. Like, oh, hey, cool, everything's back to being good. And then, like, boom, 4-win season.
And that's the thing you think about with him. Whenever it's got the darkest around Stoops, he's pulled a really good season out of his backside.
Yeah.
So this year, by the way, Vince Morrow leaves his right-hand guy. They had some loss in the portal, unproven starting quarterback in some ways, and everybody thinks it's going to be a disaster and he'll get fired. Watch him pull 9 wins.
Yeah. It's almost kind of like the Grim Reaper keeps reaching out for him and he just gets away.
So John Hale from the Lexington Herald-Leader will pop on with us to talk Kentucky football at 2:30. All right, Jeremiah Donati, the athletic director at South Carolina, very kind enough to jump on again on the postgame show with Jay and Elijah yesterday afternoon. We've heard a lot of stuff about football, and we heard about the baseball program in the first hour of the show. Now let's spin over to the men's basketball program. Davis will be cut 8. Obviously, things did not go well for Lamont Paris and the men's basketball program. No one expected as good a year as in season 2, right?
Sure.
But no one expected finishing in the bottom of the SEC and going winless in the conference most of the year.
Yep.
So here's Jeremiah Donati, again, cut 8, Dave, talking about the men's basketball program.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what. I mean, some days someone will do a case study on this last call in the old NIL world about what you saw in the men's basketball numbers. I mean, it was unbelievable. And so, we were in the middle of that, and we provided the team with Lamont with a lot of resources, and I think he put them to good use. I'm really excited about the guys that we've got coming in, the guys we've got coming back. Obviously we would have loved to have had Colin come back, but when you've got a guy who's going to be a cinch to be a upper first round draft pick, you gotta wish him well and give him a hug on his way out the door, because that's what's best for him. That's why he came here, and candidly, when he goes on and does well, that's going to open the door for Lamont to recruit others, because he's shown that he can develop those guys. So we knew we were one of the things is that Lamont made it probably look a little easier the year before, and then as the game kind of changed, we probably didn't provide enough resources on that NIL front. And so that was kind of the big thing, is we needed to make a commitment to the program to do that. We did that. As we did that, the market kind of exploded. And so we absolutely did more than we thought we would need to do. And we like, the guys we brought in. And so it was a wild off season in the sport of men's basketball. And, I think I speak for Lamont and others that this new world, if you will, NIL will continue to be important, but those contracts will be paid primarily through the rev share component. I think we're ready to kind of make that adjustment.
Yeah, I mean, yes, it's felt like that South Carolina got the resources to go out in men's basketball and bring some folks in. Well, again, it's just like baseball. We'll see how it works.
Yeah.
We'll see if Lamont can bounce back in year 4 after what was a disaster of a season in year 3 that we didn't see. Look, no one thought they'd repeat what they did in year 2 under Lamont. But we did think, okay, You're going to be, maybe you won't be as good, but hopefully you'll be competing for an NCAA tournament spot at least.
Yeah, you should have at least, in a lot of people's minds, been in the conversation, right? Somewhere around the bubble. You were pretty solidly in the year before. So if you didn't make the tournament this year, that wouldn't have been the worst thing in the world. But to not even be anywhere close to the conversation. And again, much like baseball, the season was kind of over about halfway through. We kind of say, okay, again, was it 13 games where they finally won one in the SEC play and, only got 2 wins, when it was all said and done, as far as the conference goes. So it was so much further down than people thought it could have been as far as a year that maybe you take a little bit of a step back. So, okay, how do you, and again, they've gone out there and really kind of reset the roster in a lot of ways. So how much different can it look? How much better can it look? We're going to have to see.
Isn't the whole baseball season, the men's basketball season, almost like eerily similar in some ways?
So crazy.
It's creepy.
And it's funny, and obviously the expectation for women's basketball is insanely high, but, the 2 women's sports for the spring and winter, obviously, were phenomenal, and both ended up coming up a little bit short of doing something special, national championship for women's basketball, and 1 out away from going to Oklahoma City for softball. So yeah, the men's sports just fell on their face this year.
Yeah, it was so weird. Neither thought that they were going to be like wow, but no one thought they were going to be, to use an industry term. So it's just like it was very strange how they all went down the same path together.
Yeah, and look, for South Carolina men's basketball, who, again, doesn't have a deep, rich history when it comes to making deep tournament runs or anything like that outside of the one Final Four back in 2017, I guess if you had to pick between the two, it's a more acceptable bad season. But for baseball, it should never be that bad. Never, ever be anywhere close to as bad as it was this year.
Another conversation that they were having was about the stadium project. We know that Williams-Brice is going to go get some renovations, more premium seating, which you need today. South Carolina was near the bottom when it comes to luxury boxes / premium seating. So that's going to be upgraded. Some other upgrades are going to happen as well. Here is Jeremiah Donati talking about the stadium project. Cut 7, Dave.
As soon as the season's over, if all goes well, we would be working on the first stage of this. And, you mentioned we did put out the renderings, much more to come there. We're really excited about what we're seeing evolve as the kind of the tenets of this project and the 4 or 5 big things we're trying to accomplish. You just mentioned the West Side Premium, which is obviously, a big part of this for sure. We need to significantly upgrade those experiences, and there's a revenue component there. But then you start saying, okay, how do we touch all the fans, including the students? And I think one of the things I'm really excited about is enhancing the student section you talk about the club underneath their space, the new video boards, they'll be visible from the student section. And to most of the fans, will be in the south end zone. Just imagine Williams-Brice Stadium with those components. It'll be pretty neat. And then, of course, the little stuff, the restrooms, the concessions, relocating the visiting team locker room so we don't have their buses out in front of our stadium. All those will add to a better experience. They'll all add to more efficiency within the stadium. When you have an inefficient operation, it drives up costs. It leads to delays. It causes a lot of frustrations with our fans. And so we want to help solve for all those things. So we're trying to accomplish a lot. It's a very interesting time in our world as you hear about these tariffs and these costs. But my experience has been that it's never a better time than to do it right now, that these costs, they always go up. I've never, and again, I haven't done this forever, but my experience has been it doesn't get cheaper to do these things. And so the time is really now. We've got a tremendous amount of momentum. We've got a lot of donors that are ready to jump in. So you're just really excited. Hopefully you can hear the excitement in my voice. I think it'll be a great thing for not just the athletics department, but for the school, for the city, for the state. These things. And then the other thing too is I would just say about it is that this will also invite more guests to the city of Columbia. And what I mean by that is outside events and concerts and those types of things. It's our job on this university to literally and figuratively invite people to this campus, and this will be a big part of that.
Look, this thing's a positive in so many ways. As cool as Willie B is, especially a night game, you got to get more luxury / premium seating.
Just to get yourself on the level with the other programs that have been doing this for years.
Because it's such a stream of revenue.
Oh, sure.
And
in an era where you need revenue.
Yes, last time I checked. Plus, once you get past the stadium renovation, you have all this other land that you want to look at.
Sure,
that can generate revenue as well for you.
Because again, Williams-Brice Stadium is used effectively 6 times a year, 7 if you want to count the spring game or whatever. And for as valuable of a property as that is, you can get a whole lot more out of it if you have other things around there. And again, the idea is kind of something like the Battery like they have in Atlanta outside of Truist Park. And is it going to be exactly that? No, probably not. But something that just keeps people out there outside of those 6 Saturdays every fall.
Yeah, you've got to find other ways to generate revenue in that space. And that's what Jeremiah Donati, and let's just be honest here. One of the reasons Donati was brought in is to make money.
Yes.
He is here to make money. Yes, you do all the other traditional AD things, and not just Donati, ADs all over this country.
Yeah.
You're being looked at, hey, how you going to make us some money? We need money. Yeah. We need money badly.
And why would he go from a place like TCU that's in a good place to South Carolina? Because there's more money to be made here.
You can see... Look, it doesn't take a genius to look around and go what the possibilities are here. It really doesn't. All right, College World Series kicked in. Coastal Carolina and Arizona going at it right off the jump. Coastal has got the 3rd best odds to win this thing behind LSU and
Arkansas.
Arkansas, thank you. I just got stuck on the A. So LSU and Arkansas have the best odds, and then it's Coastal. And, of course, Coastal Carolina taking on Arizona in Game 1. Out in Omaha, just underway. Arizona just got a knock to start the game, so there will not be a no-hitter thrown by Coastal today.
Not today.
And, a very interesting article in the State was written, and the question was asked, is Coastal Carolina the best college baseball program in the state? If you look at the resume over the last, 10 years?
Yeah.
You have to say yes.
They won a national championship since then.
Second trip to Omaha, that's 2 more than Clemson or South Carolina in the last decade.
I think, and if Coastal were to win the national championship this year, they have 2. South Carolina would have 2.
Mm-hmm.
They will have had multiple trips to Omaha since 2012.
Mm-hmm.
You would have had none. So, yeah, I think that, if it's not already there, that would eventually turn it back into their favor.
Yeah, look, the results are the results. And right now, Coastal is getting better results in Clemson or South Carolina when it comes to the NCAA tournament and getting to Omaha. And they are. And you said, okay, why? People here know what's gone on ever since Ray Tanner stepped down and retired. At Clemson, Leggett got moved on. And they've had some successful seasons. They just can't advance in the tournament. Clemson's biggest problem is they have fizzled in the postseason. Mm-hmm. They've hosted this year. What happened to Clemson?
Yeah, fell apart.
I think Eric Bakich is a really good coach. Last year, got to the Supers. But again, this year, underachieved in the regional and didn't get out of their own regional they were hosting. Clemson's biggest issues has been in the postseason. In South Carolina, we see the lack of consistency when it comes to the NCAA tournament. You've been to a couple of, 3 Supers, I think, since Ray retired, 1 with Chad and 2 with Mark.
Yeah, I think that sounds right.
But, it just, you took for granted that you were going to make it to Omaha in a span of X amount of years, and it hasn't happened since you lost on the try for the three-peat.
Yep.
Think about telling a South Carolina baseball fan, after you lose that third try for a championship, that it would be over a decade until you could get back again, at least.
Nobody will believe you.
Nobody believes you.
You never think the dynasty is going to come to an end.
Nope.
Nobody does.
Nope. So a very interesting piece in the State about, is Coastal Carolina the best baseball program in the state? Right now, if you look at results, it's yes, to be fair. Up next, speaking of our buddy Scott Hamilton for the Post-Courier, we will talk with Scott about Coastal Carolina baseball. We'll talk about the U.S. Open and some other stuff. So Scott Hamilton next from the Post-Courier. Yap with our buddy Scott next here on the Halftime Show on the Game. Time to get Scott Hamilton in here for the Post and Courier. Find out what's trending in Scott's world. So what you got, man? What is on the? I mean, I know you're a world traveler. I know you're a playboy. I know you're a Renaissance man. What's going on in Scott Hamilton's world today?
Are you still in your patriotic dungeon from the other day?
I had to make a quick trip up to see my dad, so I was in Eastern Kentucky, and I picked up a case of Blanton's.
Blanton's?
You can't buy that. Yes.
Never heard of it.
Yeah. Wow. What is your call-in number? And that you can discuss after I'm done, and plenty of people will call in, and they will chastise you for not knowing about the finest bourbon ever made.
I have not. I'm not a huge bourbon guy, man. It's not my jam these days. I'm past my bourbon prime.
You had a bourbon prime.
Well, I can't talk about it because the court records are sealed.
That's why he was in Maryland. That's why he has to go back every so often to report.
Yeah, man.
I've never thought about that. Are you checking in with your
my people?
Your people?
Yeah, I got to check in with my people. Well, you know, Scott, I did a few months in Kentucky.
Penitentiary.
I was the only person in Kentucky not drinking bourbon.
Define a few months. You did a few months at like a camp?
Well, it felt like, camp? Hey, I won't go into detail, but it felt like a camp, if you know what I'm saying.
I know exactly what you're saying.
All right, man. So we got Coastal Carolina just starting off against Arizona in the College World Series. And interesting, I mean, you're going to have a post up about Coach Gilmore, the retired baseball coach at Coastal, what, tomorrow?
Yeah, that's my column for tomorrow. I caught up with Gilly a couple of days ago. You know, and I wrote a long-form piece for the Post and Courier about him last year leading up to his retirement. And I catch up with him periodically. Gilly's got cancer. He's had cancer for years, and he's fought it tooth and nail, and he just keeps grinding, man. He just keeps grinding. He goes out to Denver. He was going to Houston for his treatments. He goes to Denver now. But here's the thing. He really stayed away from the program this year. He did. And he is in Omaha right now. By the way, Coastal's got a runner on second. They just moved him over. It's so that's cool. I got distracted. But he's in Omaha right now, and this will be the most Coastal Carolina baseball that he will have seen all year. He stayed away from the program. He thought, you know what, I handed over the keys. I'm going to let somebody else drive it. And obviously it's worked out pretty good.
Speaking of Coastal, we were just having this debate a moment ago. What's the gap between where the Chanticleers are and where both South Carolina and Clemson are as baseball programs right now?
Oh, that's a really good question. It's hard to quantify, Tyler, because talent-wise, you could almost make the argument that the Gamecocks are better.
Should be.
But you should be. Should be, absolutely. But and Kevin Schnall, who took over for Gilly, longtime assistant at Coastal, he's now the head coach at Chanticleers. It's more than just getting the best talent, man. It's about building that roster, building guys who play the kind of baseball that you want to play. And we just saw it right now. I mean, Coastal bunting a runner over from first to second in the bottom of the first inning. Mm-hmm. Bunting a runner over from first to second. Yep. That's a philosophy. That's a systemic thing. But it's also about getting personalities that fit, meshing together, and the result is you can win. In baseball, more than any other sport, that's possible because it's easier to overcome the physicality part of the game than it is in basketball, than it is in football. And that's what's really stymieing South Carolina right now is that the people that assembled that roster had no clue how to build a team. They could assemble a roster but not build a team, and there's a massive difference. Now, as far as Clemson, that's a sticky wicket. I mean, that's a good team. That's a good roster. But their pitching just came out at the wrong time. I question the pitching coach's strategy. I mean, I'm all for throwing aggressive, being aggressive, getting guys off the plate. But when you're hitting batter after batter, when you're bringing in 2 runs in 1 inning in a super regional because you hit back-to-back batters with the bases loaded, that's a problem, dude.
Yes, it is, and that's one of the reasons why they're home once again. Scott Hamilton hanging out with us from Post and Courier here on the Halftime Show, which is trending at 2, sponsored by Gamecock Traditions and Traditions Fine Jewelry. Okay, let's switch over. U.S. Open. Right now, J.J. Spawn, Sam Burns. Spawn's up by a stroke on Burns. Thurston, I just love the name Thurston. Thurston Lawrence is sitting in third from South Africa. Ben Griffin, U.S. Fourth and Victor Hovland. They kind of round out the top 5. All right, it's early in the second round, obviously. Where are you at with what's going on so far, and what is the toughest major golf course maybe in the history of major golf courses?
Yeah, it's kind of ridiculous. And here's my thing. I have no problem with the golf course being difficult. I have no problem with it being excessively penal. I don't like the way the USGA goes up and gums up the works for these things because they want to protect par. And a course like Oakmont, you have to be careful, dude, because by design, this is it's a piranha of a golf course. I mean, it's hard. It's hard, dude, on a regular Tuesday with the members playing. But they try to go in and funk it up with, U.S. Open stuff. It becomes unplayable. And I'm okay with being hard again, but I want good shots rewarded. I don't want good shots to not matter where you hit it, right by the pin and then it just rolls off anyhow. I can't stand it. And I saw that happen at Shinnecock in 2004. I was there for the Open in 2004 at Shinnecock. And on that Sunday, wow, the course was out of control. They had a par 3 that was playing about 180 yards. And downhill, Terry, downhill about 180 yards, 8-iron normally. They're having to lay up into a greenside bunker and then chip on, hoping they can make par because they wouldn't hold the green. After the first 4 or 5 groups, they started syringing, watering the green to slow it down. I want to say Goosen won that with a -2. Phil was even in second place. That was the USGA being overzealous. Now, I will say this. So far, and again, it's only on Friday. So far, the USGA has done a pretty good job of not letting the course get out of control. Now, if the rain comes, that's going to be different. They're going to have to make some decisions. They're going to have to cut that rough because you can't add water to that rough. It's already 5 inches, and if you make it wet and more dense, it's not going to be playable. It's not going to be fair. They're going to have to be maybe a little more gentle with the greens. But so far, I will give the USGA their flowers. They've done okay.
About 2 more minutes here. We talked about the other day, but Rory McIlroy's comments about now that he's won the Masters, completed the career Grand Slam, trying to find some motivation. What do you think about what he had to say, and was very honest about the other day?
I said it all along. I said, what else does he have to achieve in his golfing life? And it would be different, Tyler, if if the career Grand Slam was something that just kind of materialized along the way. It wasn't. It was his destiny, man, when he came out with that curly hair back in 2008 and that Irish accent that was really Irish, dude. I mean, he was hard to understand. But he spent years with that burden on his back of not only taming Augusta, but securing his place in golfing history. Now he has nothing left. And I wouldn't be surprised if his tank is completely empty and he can't get it filled. I mean, maybe here and there he pops back up, but the margin for error right now is so thin that you have to be laser focused week in and week out, especially when you have a guy like Scotty Scheffler, who's not doing great this week, but he's otherwise in the midst of a run we haven't seen since peak Tiger, man, when Tiger Palooza was the thing. By the way, guys, before you let me go, I did a parlay for this week for 4 guys to finish top 20. Sam Burns, Ben Griffin, Russell Henley, Colin Morikawa. Morikawa's screwing me over right now. He shot 74 today. He's 34, but the rest of them are in pretty darn good shape, man. I'm feeling good right now. So everybody throw up a prayer for Scotty, and I'll be really happy the next time I join y'all.
Well, Bourbon's on you then.
Ready? It's all about Hamilton hitting his parlay.
It is.
So forget your life. Just sit and hope for Scott to get his parlay.
We will definitely do that.
We are all Colin Morikawa fans to come back after that 74 today.
Man, all right, bud. We always appreciate you, man. We'll do it next week.
You the man. See y'all.
All right, see you now. Our buddy Scott Hamilton, Post and Courier. You always check his work at Post and Courier. He'll drop something about Coach Gilmore tomorrow. We'll come back. Get into some Kentucky football with John Hale from the Lexington Herald Leader. Find out what's going on with the Wildcats and is Mark Stoops on as hot as a seat as we think he is. That's next here on the Halftime Show on the Game. All right, we are talking some Wildcats football. Find out what's going on in Kentucky with Mark Stoops. His right-hand man, Vince Morrow, pieces out to the enemy at Louisville. Stoops coming off an awful season. And in the offseason before, it flirted with Texas A&M, which wouldn't make the fan base very happy, if I remember.
No.
So there's one way to find out what's going on. The guy that has all the microphones buried over at the complex that nobody knows about, where he can eavesdrop on everything. John Hale, Lexington Herald Leader. John, seriously, thanks for jumping in. Give us a little insight on what's happening with Kentucky football. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
Hey, so John, I guess first of all, our perception is that Mark Stoops' seat is probably hotter than it's ever been. I know early in his tenure there was some hot-seatedness in some way, shape, or form, but is it even hotter now than it was in the early days before he became successful?
No, it depends on how you look at it. I mean, there was a moment in the 2015 season, so that would have been year 3 here. They started that year really poorly. They lost. They barely beat New Mexico State at home. They got blown out at Florida. They blew a lead against Southern Miss in their home opener and lost that game. And it was actually that South Carolina game where they won later in October where they turned it around. But there was a moment like 3 weeks into the season where there were all sorts of rumors that he wasn't going to get off the bus at the game. That they were that close to making a move. So I think the seat was hotter in terms of risk to his job then. The pressure is hotter now, I think. But the reality of the situation is that even after this year, if they were to just completely tank and go 2-10 or whatever, his buyout is close to $35 million. It would still be the second highest buyout in college football history. And in this current environment, as everybody's looking for more money to handle revenue sharing and all that, it's just not realistic to think you're going to pay $35 million to fire your all-time winningest coach. Now, if it goes that poorly, are there scenarios where they negotiate, maybe paying that out over time and Mark decides he needs a fresh start somewhere else? Certainly I think those things are on the table, but I am not in the camp that I think that Kentucky's going to fire him this year if they don't go to a bowl game or something like that, just because the finances of it don't make sense for them. That being said, the fan base, certainly a large portion of it, very unhappy at the moment, and the Vince Morrow news this week is just, part of that as well.
And we'll get to that news in just a second, but when you look at Kentucky football, of course, Kentucky is a basketball school. We all know that. Where is that line of what's acceptable in a given year for football? What do they have to accomplish for the majority of people to say, yeah, that was a fine season?
Well, I mean, in this expect to this way that Mark's kind of a victim of his own success here, because they went to 8 straight bowl games from 2016 to 2023. The only losing record in that was in the 2021 or the 2020 season with COVID, where they played 10 SEC games and they were 5-7, I think, that year at the end of the year, 5-6. And so they were still pretty close in the all SEC schedule. And so the expectation was the bare minimum is you have to go to bowl games. Before last year, I think there were certainly plenty of fans who were disappointed in the way both the 22 and 23 seasons played out, because they went into it with a lot of hope. They were coming off 10 wins in 2021. It felt like they had turned a corner, that maybe they could compete for an expanded playoff spot at times. They would be in that conversation to where they could go to before the playoff expanded, go to a New Year's Six bowl game. And both of those seasons just went really, really poorly. I mean, in November 2022, they had a chance still to get to a New Year's Day bowl game. There were all sorts of rumors at the time that he was going to be a candidate in Nebraska. He signed a contract extension in November of that year, less than a year after he signed his last one. And the next day after they signed the contract, they lost to Vanderbilt at home, and Vanderbilt snapped their, 26-game SEC losing streak in Kroger Field. And they have a losing record since that day. And so it has just gone very badly since that point. And so I think a lot of fans look at it as a 3-year downward trend. But even with the disappointment in 22 and 23, I think he still got the benefit of the doubt. It was going 4-8 last year that has seemed to be the tipping point. If they get to a bowl game this year, if they go 6-7 wins, I think the casual fans will see that as progress and will be fine with it. But this is a program now where they don't want to have these 4-8 seasons. They expect to go to a bowl every year, and so I think that's kind of where the bar's set.
John Hill hanging out with us, Lexington Herald Leader, talking some Wildcats football here on the halftime show in the game. How much did the flirtation with Texas A&M, where it became he was going to get offered the job or be the coach or whatever, how much did that hurt him going into the season with the fan base, if at all? Maybe it didn't. You tell us.
Yeah, I mean, I think that in retrospect, there are plenty of people who are using that as an extra point against him over the last 2 years. Like, he didn't even want to be here. There's a perception by some people that he's checked out. I don't think that's actually accurate, because I think if nothing else, he wants to win games so he can get a better job. I mean, like, I think you could make the argument that he thinks he's hit a ceiling here, and he was so engaged with A&M because he thought he needed to go somewhere else to take that next step in his career. And that's a guy who wants to prove people wrong. So I think that part is not true, but certainly people have used that in retrospect. I think the more damning part in his relationship with the fans was the year prior to that, after they had, they started back-to-back years at either 6-0 or 6-1, going into a game against Georgia that was on national TV. The game day was in Georgia for one of those games, and people were like, oh, this is the year they can be a real contender, and they got kind of blown out in both games. And then his radio show the next Monday, somebody called in and was complaining about not being able to compete against those top teams in the SEC, and he made a comment about, like, well, if you want to compete against them, you need to pony up in terms of giving more NIL money at the time. Like, they have much more NIL resources, thus you need to pony up. And that pony up comment, I think, did more to damage his relationship with fans than the A&M stuff did, although the A&M stuff has certainly come up since then as people are complaining.
So when you look at this team, what they've done in the offseason, a lot of activity in the portal, Zach Calzada going to play his 12th year of college football, it seems like. What's kind of the outlook for what this year's team can be?
Yeah, it's just a total toss-up. Like, anybody who tells you they know for sure, I think, is wrong. Of their 85 scholarship players, 47 of them will be on the team for the first time this year, between their 24 transfers and I think 21, 22 high school signees. So, like, the entire team's new. And so many of the transfers they got this year are guys from Group of 5 schools who are proven at that level, who want to come to the SEC and show they can do it against better competition for NFL scouts. And maybe that works. Maybe they've gotten back to that kind of hard-nosed, workman-like mentality that was so important when they were successful, and those guys will bring that through. But maybe also those guys just aren't good enough to play in the SEC. Like, we do not know until they go out and play games. Calzada is, like, kind of the perfect example of that. He was a guy who had promise, early in his career at A&M, helped them upset number 1 Alabama, then just kind of went completely off the radar with a shoulder injury and transferred to Auburn and didn't play, and then landed at Incarnate Word and put up video game numbers there for 2 years at the FCS level. But, like, that was a spread offense against, way worse competition. You won't expect him to do that here, but can he be a better version of the guy that he was at Texas A&M? Maybe. And maybe that's enough for Kentucky if you want to run the ball and do those kind of things. But we just have no idea what to expect from this team, because there are so many new faces and guys who have just not played at this level before.
John Hale, Lexington Herald Leader. Last minute, John, real quick. Rev share, obviously, we talk about it till we all want to have our eyeballs pop out. A lot of it we hear is 75% to football, 15% to men's basketball. Again, Kentucky, last time I checked, huge basketball tradition, big basketball school, more basketball school than football school. Have you heard anything how the rev share could change at Kentucky because basketball means so much to that fan base and that athletic program?
Yeah, they're being very tight-lipped about it. I mean, they had a board meeting last night where they announced a bunch of facilities projects and kind of their financial strategy to get through this, and again, for like the third time in the last month, declined to say what their split's going to be. They're saying that they're going to be flexible. They're going to adapt year to year to what programs need, but I don't think there's any question they're going to end up giving more money to basketball than less to football than a lot of their SEC rivals are, and they're a little worried that that's going to be used against them in recruiting, and they're going to see how it is. The one thing that might make the football numbers pretty similar to the rest of the league is because of how important Kentucky basketball is here. That should be an area where they can go out and say our 15 men's basketball players can make significantly extra money in those outside NIL deals. But until we see how the clearinghouse and all that's going to play out, we don't really know how that's going to work out. But they should be able to make up the difference there and still have one of the highest basketball NIL budgets in the country with those outside deals too. We'll just have to see how it plays out.
John Hale, Lexington Herald Leader, we appreciate your time. We might bug you again down the road. Hopefully you don't block our number.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sounds good. Thanks for having me.
Hey, thanks, John. We appreciate it. Firehouse Up Text the Hour coming up. Also, our handoff with Jay Phillips for the postgame show sponsored by Little Pigs. Coastal up 2-0 second inning against Arizona at the College World Series. We'll give you an update on that as well. Coming back, it's a halftime show. Wrap it up next with David Ayer, Tyler Head, Terry Ford on the game. All right, time to get our Firehouse Sub Text the hour. Then we'll hand this baby off to Jay Phillips in the postgame show, sponsored by Little Pigs on Alpine. What do you got on the Firehouse Sub Text line there, my man?
After hearing that last interview, I feel a lot better about the Kentucky game. Endless texter.
Yes. I know you're listening intently there, Jay Phillips. But yeah, we talked to John Hale from the Lexington Herald Leader.
Right.
Because I'm just interested. I mean, Vince Morrow, Stoops' right-hand man, kicks out to Louisville.
Yeah.
You're coming off a 4-win season. You're coming off of making the fan base pretty angry with your flirtation, your slap and tickle with Texas A&M. And how much hot seat is there for Mark Stoops? I was just curious.
Right.
And the thing, we talk about this all the time. Now, the money really matters now more than ever. Do you know Stoops has the second biggest buyout in America?
Well,
after this year.
Isn't he where is he in the rank of SEC coaches?
He's 5th in the SEC and 9th nationally, a little bit over $9 million a year.
With the worst record in the top 10 by far.
And by the way, a losing conference record.
That's crazy.
So he has the second biggest buyout.
That's why Andy Staples says it's actually the best job in America.
Sure.
It's so good. You can be mediocre and get paid like nobody's business. It's like being a meteorologist on TV. Be wrong half the time and get paid a ton of loot.
They said it was going to rain today. Somewhere.
Yeah,
Somewhere.
So, Stoops, that's the thing about it. We talk about this all the time. Your first thought is, dude, you got the cushiest job in America. Just roll your 6 or 7 wins, go to your bowl games. Once Midnight Madness shows up and Kentucky basketball starts, no one cares about you. But, that ego's involved in being a head coach, right?
Yeah.
You see the ceiling of Kentucky, and you go, I want to go somewhere else and have a real chance to win, because your ego says, man, if you put me at a football school, I'll kill it. So Stoops started flirting around, and that's where you're at.
Yeah. Well, Mrs. Stoops probably enjoys the comfortable life that they have at this stage. And I really did think, in all seriousness, that he would ultimately go to Iowa. And I suppose he still could.
Well, Kirk Ferentz is never going to retire.
I know, man. Well, I admire that, if nothing else. They've had 2 head coaches in nearly 50 years.
Hayden Fry and Kirk Ferentz. That's right.
He just doesn't believe in offense. That's the problem.
Guys, real quick, not to throw ourselves totally off the road, but I had so much respect for Ferentz until this disaster with his son.
Yeah.
I lost so much respect for Ferentz during that, because his special teams were near the best in the country. His defense was about the best in the country. If he would have had just a middle-of-the-road offense, they could have competed for the college football playoff.
Oh, absolutely. They had a couple of years that were, statistically and in obviously a fine conference, they might have had the best defense in the country.
Yeah.
From a talent and production standpoint. Talent, I say, but they had, it's like NFL teams, like, you have a Super Bowl defense, but you can't score points.
Yeah, right.
No,
like maybe my Broncos of a few years ago.
They are phenomenal at 2/3 of football. It's that third part they can't figure out.
And the fact that he kept his kid in there, look, I get it's your boy, but Iowa football is more important than your boy professionally.
Well, yeah, like you said, you could have had, you probably had a top 10 special teams, a top 10 defense. If you could have had a number 60
think
offense,
about it.
You certainly are in the conversation.
Yeah.
There's no doubt there.
So, Ferentz will never leave. And just going back to Stoops, how much is he? Because he's always had this reputation among football people, right, of he's a football guy.
Right.
Well, the 4-win season doesn't help, because then all of a sudden you look at the totality of the record and you go like this.
Well, I just you wonder what is wearing thin up there. If there's a message, is it commitment? Recruiting. For a while, remember he finally hit Ohio.
Yeah.
We used to joke about that. I used to joke, like, Ryan Brewer crossed the shark-infested waters of the Ohio River to come play in the Southeastern Conference. Oh,
man, what do you got today there, boss?
Ben Portnoy's going to come by. A lot been going on, obviously, with the House settlement and some other things around the SEC that he's been following, and our own Cale Wilson covering the 7-on-7s. And we have a very fun Father's Day themed start bench drop.
All right, Tyler, Dave, nice work. Jay and Elijah next on the post-game show here on The Game. Talk to you later.